Listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we're going to be talking about some of the many unsolved mysteries in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is a huge game with a number of lore implications. There have been so many theories and debates and discussions about this game in so many different categories. Timeline implications, character backstories, story retcons, there's so much. Myself personally, I've already put out a few different theories on this channel about some of the mysteries in Tears of the Kingdom, but they are just theories, they aren't necessarily the correct answer. And really, I feel like I've only scratched the surface here. So while I may later down the road have a more dedicated, fully fledged video for each of these unsolved mysteries mentioned in this video and more, I figured it'd be a good idea to put together a little list of some that I think are quite interesting. Now before going forward, let me point out that there will be spoilers in this video. I won't be talking about specifically the very end of the game, but there will be a lot of late game elements mentioned, so do keep that in mind. Going beyond that, I'd also just like to say that we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. With your help, it just might be possible. So the first mystery I'd like to discuss is the Ancient Heroes aspect. This is an armor set you can unlock by beating every single shrine in the game. And it's said that this item contains the spirit of a hero who once saved Hyrule. And when you take a look at how this armor set looks, you look like a Zonai, very animal-like with all the adornments of the Zonai. But there are some key differences. You have a tail, you have long red hair, so it's definitely thought-provoking. But it also becomes more interesting when you consider that the way this character looks might be something like the hero we see in the tapestry from Breath of the Wild. There is a tapestry that tells of the legend or story of a princess and hero staving off Calamity Ganon, defeating it for a time. That hero depicted could also be what we see with the Ancient Heroes aspect. But what makes this even more mysterious is that the implication of this hero fighting Calamity Ganon suggests that it would take place after the events of the founding of Hyrule, where we see King Rauru sealing Ganondorf that would eventually amount to Calamity Ganon many years later. Because Ganondorf says to Rauru when he's swearing his fealty that the Zonai no longer grace their presence, implying that it's just King Rauru and his sister Mineru, no one else. So what's going on here? Well, I think it means that there have to be Zonai in some way, shape, or form, or at least their lineage. It wouldn't be the first time we saw a race of people in The Legend of Zelda seemingly go extinct only to see them return in what we think might be a later game. So Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom take place at the end of the timeline. We're not sure which one, that hasn't been clarified, if even any, necessarily. But the Zora are no longer around in the Wind Waker, and in Twilight Princess, another separate timeline, there are no Gerudo, and there's only one old lady that is a Sheikah, suggesting that there might not be any more of them afterwards either. And yet, all of them are prevalent in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So just because a species may not be shown on screen, it's possible that there may still be others around hiding somewhere, perhaps just not being anywhere within the events of the story. For example, Sidon's wife-to-be, Yona, comes from another realm of Zora, presumably, that's nowhere around the events of Breath of the Wild. But I would say this mystery transitions quite well into the second one, and that's regarding the offspring for King Rauru and Queen Sonia. So they are the king and queen, and they founded Hyrule. We don't know how long it's been since they founded Hyrule, but they already have a kingdom, they already have structures, they already have loyal people serving them, and they've already had the different races of Hyrule swearing their allegiance. So they likely didn't found Hyrule yesterday. It's more likely it's been going on for at least a handful of years. Also maybe suggesting that Rauru and Sonia have been married for a little bit, and based off how mature they seem compared to Princess Zelda, almost taking on more like parental roles, there's a solid chance they had kids at some point or another. Queen Sonia even makes mention that they share a blood connection to Princess Zelda, implying that in some way, shape, or form, someone that carries their bloodline existed. which I think basically means they did have a kid. But where is that kid? We see no sign of that kid outside of Sonia saying that there is a blood connection. If we try to fill in the gaps, maybe they had a kid off screen and they just weren't relevant to these adult conversations and events, so they weren't within the main part of the memories told, so they weren't characters we'd see in the memories. So it makes sense to think that there was a marriage of a Hylian woman and a Zora male, and they had a kid, and it was more of a hybrid race, and maybe that somehow has to do with what we see with a hero's aspect, who doesn't look quite like your typical human, or quite like your typical Zonai, but something perhaps in between. And maybe this is several generations down the line. Maybe the red hair is because there was a Zonai person, or at least someone with some Zonai ancestry that also wedded a Gerudo. Maybe this happened at some point after the imprisoning war, where maybe there was some royalty that still shared some of Rauru's lineage that looked pretty Zonai, and they wedded a Gerudo woman in an effort to mend the relations between the people of Hyrule and the Gerudo. But on the note of families, a family that we do see in Tears of the Kingdom is the family of Kass. But not Kass himself, which brings me to the third unsolved mystery we're talking about today. Where is Kass? Kass is a Rito that we interact with quite a bit throughout Breath of the Wild, including its DLC. He's one of the more substantial characters in the game, yet there is no Kass at all anywhere in Tears of the Kingdom, except for a moment in the quest line with another Rito, Pen. At some point, Pen says, "A famous bard once perfected his craft in this place, studying the songs of this land." So this is a location that Kass was once at one point, and here Pen is making a reference to him, but in the past tense. So Tears of the Kingdom hasn't totally forgotten about his existence, but he's clearly not important in this game because he's nowhere to be found, at least from what we've seen so far. Tears of the Kingdom is a huge game. It's possible there could be a discovery later down the road where maybe we find something. Considering how we also have the Zora Yona, who's from a location outside of normal Hyrule, it's possible that Kass, for whatever reason, is just elsewhere. Or maybe like many of the other Rito, due to the events of the upheaval, they were off doing different things to help out Rito Village, and maybe Kass went somewhere in an effort to do so, and we just don't know where that is. It's possible in the future we do get DLC that perhaps answers this question. Kass was heavily related to the DLC in Breath of the Wild. Maybe he'll take on a similar role in Tears of the Kingdom that will also explain his absence as well. Though it should be noted that the DLC for Breath of the Wild was announced before it came out, and we're already a few months removed from the release of Tears of the Kingdom, and there has not been any mention of Tears of the Kingdom DLC. Doesn't mean it can't come later down the road. I think it's actually possible we may not see it until next year. We'll see. But my point is, it's not guaranteed, and we may never get an answer on where is Kass. But I'm optimistic. But other flying creatures I'm quite curious on are the dragons. Specifically, the 3 eternal dragons that we see in Breath of the Wild that are also in Tears of the Kingdom, the Servants of the Spring. What are their true identities? Yes, we know their names are Dinral, Nadra, and Farosh, implying that they're in some way related to the goddesses. But there also seems to be substantial evidence that they're also related to the Zonai. They bear a lot of resemblance to Zonai with their manes and animal-like faces, and it is said that the process of draconification, ingesting a secret stone, turns you into an eternal dragon. So there's an implication here that the Servants of the Spring at one point weren't draconified, and likely Zonai. And if that's the case, who were they exactly? Were they also sages? Were they already Servants of the Spring before the draconification? Are they at all tied to the dragons we see from Skyward Sword? It's not totally certain. I did recently put out a theory video talking about the origins of the Zonai, and I do think the 3 Servants of the Spring are closely tied to that, so if you want more theories and speculation on that, you can check that out. It'll be in the card above and also in the end screen. But there's one more mystery I'd like to discuss here, and that's regarding the Triforce. Where is it? The Triforce wasn't even super apparent in Breath of the Wild, but at least in Breath of the Wild, we saw it come out of Zelda's hand. We saw the golden symbol light up. It existed just in really opportune moments. In Tears of the Kingdom, outside of it being used as a symbol for tattoos or relics, we didn't see it, and it was speculated by many, myself included, that because Ganondorf would be playing a more vital role to the story, as did Zelda, alongside Link, because we would have this triangle of characters, that it would bring back the triangles, the Triforce, the three different pieces, Triforce of Power, Wisdom, and Courage. But that was never made totally blatantly clear. Does Zelda still have the Triforce, even though we never saw a symbol upon or emanating from her? It's possible. But I also wonder if maybe it's tied to just the Secret Stones. I speculate that the Secret Stones could be, in some ways, like a replacement to the Triforce. Perhaps in the absence of the Triforce, the Secret Stones can be used instead. They also have a lot of power, and the Secret Stone is what allowed Ganondorf to become the Demon King, and in the past, that was the Triforce. And by past, I mean previous games, not necessarily timeline. So they can cause similar incredible things. Now, why would they focus on the Secret Stones as opposed to the Triforce? Well, there could be some lore implications there. It may be the case that at this point in the timeline, the Triforce is no longer accessible, or at least not currently accessible. It's also possible that at the end of Breath of the Wild, Zelda used the power of the Triforce, and because she used the power of the Triforce to seal away Calamity Ganon, it was gone. Maybe she actually made a wish upon it, and that's what led to everything that occurred. So it's no longer around, so they needed something else, and that's why we had the Secret Stones, not just in the past, but technically a little bit in the present as well. But those are some mysteries in Tears of the Kingdom that at some point or another I may dig a little deeper into, and if you guys have any other mysteries you'd like to mention in the comments below, please feel free to do so, or even add more to the mysteries or theories I've talked about today. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm very curious. Anyways, everyone, this is Andreas Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.